What's up, Wizards? It's Dev and Ziggy. We're from Mtg. We like magic talk and such. And tonight, just a pretty chill video, but I hope it's fairly quick, but it probably won't be, about Wizards' upcoming ban and restricted announcement on Monday morning. As I record this, the top 8 of Mythic Championship 5 has just been established. They wrapped up day 2, and I kind of wanted to wait and hold off to talk about this particular subject until the top 8 was established, because I think that's what's going to influence Wizards' decision the most when it comes to Monday morning. Wizards has been taking a lot of flack this week, most of it in good fun and in jest and all that, about how, oh no, this is not an emergency banning, no sirree, or madam, we are waiting until Mythic Championship 5, so it's not, don't call it an emergency banning, it's not. And like, technically it's not. I'm kind of on their side in that argument, because at least they're waiting until the end of Mythic Championship 5. I feel like that was probably the smart decision, and in the end, spoiler alert, they might not have to actually ban anything, but that doesn't mean I don't have plenty of things that we can talk about them banning. But before we get into it here, just a quick caveat. This is not what I think they should do or should not do. This is more about what they could do. And along the way, there's going to be talk of the top 8 and a little bit of statistics here and there, some numbers I'm going to throw at you. So if you enjoyed the content, like it, share it around, subscribe if you're new, do all the things. But let's go ahead and get into it by talking a little bit about Field of the Dead, because 36 hours ago, or even just like 24 hours ago as I record this, everyone just kind of assumed that this would be the most likely thing to get banned on Monday, and now it's not looking anywhere near as likely. And while I'm at it, I might as well put Golos on the screen too here, because these cards kind of go hand in hand, or land in hand, waka waka, but puns aside, going into the weekend, if you added up all the Golos and field decks, it was like 42-point-something% of the meta, which is just a huge number. And my contention is that that number is large enough that even if the decks didn't perform very well at this weekend's tournament, it still warrants some consideration come Monday morning on Wizards' part. And full disclosure, when you look at the box score, the top 8, only one Golos deck finished through to the top 8, which looks really good upon first examination. But when you really think about it, it's kind of offset by the fact that a lot of the decks in this tournament and a lot of the decks that made the top 8 exist almost solely as responses to a deck like Golos, to a deck like Field of the Dead. You know, decks like Gruul Aggro, for instance, that made this top 8. Javier Dominguez's list specifically, exist to go up under a deck like Golos with, you know, Embercleave and relatively aggressively statted creatures like Skargan Hellkite and Questing Beasts. So you're just trying to get through for as much damage as quickly as possible, and in some cases fly over them or go through with unblockable damage like Questing Beast makes available to you. So really just a strict game plan for the Golos decks is all Gruul Aggro really is right now. It's the way that deck is constructed. Mardu Knights made some concessions, you know. They would obviously play Embercleave one way or the other, but they fit in Rotting Regisaur, because Rotting Regisaur into Embercleave on the next turn is just such a ridiculous play against Field of the Dead specifically and the Cynic Food decks, which we will get to. I mean, they just probably wouldn't have that play available in their deck if it weren't for trying to go up under decks like this. So just whole decks that made the top 8 and whole decks that were, you know, registered for the tournament in the first place are built specifically to game against Golos. So even if only one copy of a Golos deck made the top 8, I would still say that it shifted and warped the metagame so much at this tournament that it still probably warrants, again, some consideration on Monday morning. But as we moved through the weekend, it seemed less and less obvious that Field of the Dead would end up getting banned on Monday morning, or Golos for that matter. I don't think that these cards are entirely safe to have in the meta, especially Field of the Dead. I think you can probably have one or the other, but not necessarily both. And I don't think that you have to ban both, but with the results over the weekend, I don't necessarily think you have to ban either one, which makes it somewhat likely that Wizards will choose to ban nothing. But there were a couple of other menaces over the weekend that I think probably need to be addressed, and if you ban Field or Golos, I think you have to ban one of these other cards too, whether I like that conclusion or not. Something else that became apparent as the weekend went on is that blue and green is a busted color combination in the current standard due to at least 3, if not 5, different cards that I want to kind of talk about really quickly here. I mean, in the end, the top 8 isn't full of Golos decks like we thought it might be, but it is full of Simic and Bant decks. You know, I think that there are a total of 5 either Simic and or Bant decks in the top 8 right now, and it's kind of a lot, and that's mostly due to, on first examination, Oko Thief of Crowns. I mean, it's a really, really highly played card over the tournament this weekend. I've got notes on it. See, Oko Thief of Crowns, 94 different copies registered among 68 decks over the weekend. And that's not even close to, the card that was registered the most, but it's still kind of in the danger zone. You look at a card like Field of the Dead, there was something like 84 copies registered. Golos was in 21 different decks at least. Oko Thief of Crowns in 94 different decks. And we'll get to a couple of other numbers along those lines. I mean, it seemed like Standard right now is focused around anywhere between 6 to 10 very, very powerful cards, and more than that, it's focused more around 3 absurdly powerful cards, and one of those is Oko Thief of Crowns, and I don't think that that's a particularly controversial statement, but I don't think that Wizards is going to ban this card or anything. I mean, it's up to $40 right now. A lot of people have bought into it and spent well over $100 for a playset of Oaks. So I don't think that Wizards is going to ruin consumer confidence, as is usually the reason they don't want to ban cards. By banning Oko right now, I think way too many people are invested way too heavily in it. And there's also the fact that aside from Garrick, this is kind of one of the face planeswalkers, the face planeswalker of Throne of Eldraine, especially if you look at Magic through the sort of competitive play lens. Oko is the face of Throne of Eldraine. And I do think that the card has proven to be a little bit over the line. And I don't really blame play design for that. Just a small aside, play design has been a great experiment, and it's received almost universally praise ever since Guilds of Ravnica came out. And this is not something that I necessarily attribute to them. The design on this card, or the standard environment in general, I mean, it's all speculation, but rather than a group of very talented and often professional players who are designing cards nowadays, I'd probably blame it on some guy that's in the room being like, hey, what we need is some face planeswalkers, everyone's a little sick of the Game Watch, so we got to come out with some really good new faces to,
drive the sales.
That. So I blame it more on the sort of hyper marketing strategy that Wizards has definitely incorporated as Arena has become more and more of a thing, and now that the launch has happened, I don't know that it's entirely play design's fault. It's probably more of that sort of corporate philosophy that wants these face planeswalkers to be very powerful cards, and again, they may have kind of stepped over the line with Oko. That said, I'll restate this. I don't think they're going to ban Oko because it's just been way too much of an investment for way too many players at this point. Whether you're buying the card in paper or spending Mythic wildcards on it or whatever, it would just really create a lot of hatred in the community, especially when it comes to the Arena side. I mean, it didn't cost you physical money, but you probably technically spent some money in a roundabout way to get your 4 copies of Oko. And right as the game has its real launch, banning this card would just be, I think, disastrous. But there are other measures that they can take if they want to keep these Simic and Bant decks in check, which I think you should for various reasons. Now, the biggest reason is, and this is subjective, but I think that this is shared between a lot of people in the community, is that Oko and these Simic decks and Bant decks in general are not fun to play against, but they're also kind of not fun to play with. It's not the most fun standard Magic environment that you can have when it's focused around Oko Thief of Crowns and Gilded Goose and stuff. It leads to a slog, and aggro, it's not like aggro's impossible to play or anything, but an Oko resolving and going up to 6 is just heartbreaking, especially if they get it on turn 2 off a Gilded Goose. They still have the Goose to start making food and gaining life, and it's just so much life gained, so many turns wasted trying to kill this Planeswalker. It's never fun Magic to play against, but again, it's just not fun to play with a lot of the time, and I think that is the actual distinction here. I've seen a lot of people on Twitter saying things like, there's a difference between a card you don't like playing against and a card that's unfun. And I think that's absolutely true, but in this case, I think we found a card that's actually unfun, both to play with and against. This video is going longer than I wanted it to, but I'll say this one more time. I don't think that they're going to ban this card under almost any circumstances. So that leads me to believe that if they do ban anything along with Field and Golos, or anything at all, for that matter, they'll probably ban other pieces from this Oko deck. Like, I think one of the best things that you could ban right now, and stick with me right now, because again, I'll reiterate, this is not what I think should happen. This is what I think could happen. I think it's possible that you just ban Nissa. Nissa is in just about as many decks as Oko over the weekend, and she's in just like everything. She's in Bant Midrange, she's in Simic Food, she's in Golgari Adventure, a deck that did not do as well as I wanted it to over the weekend, and I'm really sad about that, but it stands. My point stands. 2 copies of Nissa are in all those decks, and 4 copies of Nissa are in just about every other deck that plays her, so there's just, it's obvious how powerful this card is at this point, whether you're on a ramp plane or you just want to make a 3/3 every turn. still good. And when you have an Oko out, you can make 6/6 every turn. It's so ridiculous. I think the card might also be a little too powerful in the current meta, but I'm not sure they'll end up banning this one, another face planeswalker and all that. But if you wanted 2 cards from this deck that I think could be banned and it really wouldn't make too much of a difference, Hydroid Krasis. Hydroid Krasis is actually one of the cards registered the most over the weekend. 156 copies of Hydroid Krasis registered to this tournament, which is unbelievable. That's a ridiculous amount for one card to be registered to 68 different decks. This is a card that is powerful, unlike a card like, say, Growth Spiral. Yes, it's a very powerful Magic card, but if you're comparing the 2 cards, which one is actually more powerful? Which one wins more games? And Growth Spiral is the other card I was thinking you could ban without too many people getting up in arms. But historically, banning like some of the enabling tools for a deck rather than like the actual pieces the deck is built around hasn't worked out very well, So I'm not really sure that banning Growth Spiral is going to be enough, but I think banning Hydroid Krasis would be. Problem is, it's kind of like Oko. There were people that spent like $25 a pop for their Hydroid Krasises, and they're out like $100 for a playset if you ban it. Or, they spent $200 worth of technical real-world money getting the 4 Mythic wildcards to get 4 Hydroid Krasis on Arena. It's another card that you probably don't want to ban considering consumer confidence and all that, but I think it's a lot more safe to ban than a card like Oko because we've had like a year to play with Hydroid Krasis already, and we've just about had enough of it, haven't we, at this point? Hydroid Krasis is kind of a disgusting Magic card. And so is Oko, so is Nissa, but I think that you could probably get away with banning Krasis, and these decks would still exist to a point. They just wouldn't have this, like, unbelievable play. They can get a 6/6 Krasis, on a relatively early turn in those decks, like turn 4. They can get a huge Krasis after that turn 3 Nissa. And then suddenly they draw 3 or 4 cards, gain a bunch of life, they have a huge guy on the battlefield. It's just kind of repulsive what they can do with a Hydroid Krasis. So I could see them safely banning this card, although I do think it would hurt consumer confidence. That said, I could also see them safely banning Growth Spiral without hurting consumer confidence, but I don't think it would hurt the deck enough. Just a few points to finish things up. I don't think that you ban Gilded Goose, another thing that hurts consumer confidence, and I don't think that Gilded Goose is necessarily the problem. You could ban Wicked Wolf, but again, I don't think that that card's the problem, but, getting turn 2 Oko into turn 3 Wicked Wolf makes sure that almost no one can play aggro in this format right now, proficiently or effectively, so I don't like the Wicked Wolf on turn 3 play, but it is what it is. I don't think that it's too powerful, and you probably could keep this card without too many ramifications. I only bring it up because people have actually discussed banning this card. I also don't think that you ban, like, Questing Beast, although possibly this is another one of the more registered cards. There are about 100 copies of Questing Beast registered for the tournament, again, among all the Simic mid-range decks, the Bant decks, the Golgari Adventure decks, just a ton of Questing Beast over the weekend, and I can definitely see why. The card is disgusting, but I don't think it needs a ban either. I don't think it's an oppressive card, and if anything, I think it's one of the cards that keeps Field of the Dead in check the most, so no, don't ban this. And I've seen a couple of people suggesting this is the problem. I don't think this is in any way the problem. I do think one of the things that you have to worry about, just to kind of finish things up and put a shine on it here, is what happens when you do ban certain cards. If you ban Field of the Dead or Golos or both, and you ban Oko or Hydroid Krasis to make sure that the Simic decks don't rise to the top in the absence of the field decks, which is a thing they could do. I didn't even mention that, but if they ban Field of the Dead and Golos, or Golos, one or the other, then they might think, oh, well, now the Simic decks are going to be de facto the best decks in the format, so we have to neuter them somehow, take a card away from them. And if they do that, I actually think it'll be really interesting and open up Standard a whole lot. Or, conversely, it could make very dangerous and equally or even more unfun decks. Forefront of Standard. Like, at the very beginning of the Standard here, the very beginning of ELD Standard, we saw Doom Stax, Esper Stax, take home a tournament. And it uses, like, Doom Foretold and a bunch of other garbage. Doom Foretold is kind of the marquee card in the deck. And it is incredibly obnoxious to play against this card. And if you take away things like Field of the Dead or the Oko decks, if you neuter them by taking away Hydroid Krasis or something, then I do have a bit of a fear that a deck like Doomstax, takes things over, and that'll just be the worst Standard environment. Even though the deck is fun to play, it is in no way ever fun to play against. So, you have to take things like that into consideration too. We banned this, we banned that. What is now the best deck? And I don't think that we want to be in that format, even though, again, that's wild speculation based on, very early results in this format. But it is something you have to take into account. But in any case, I think that I'm probably done babbling. Is there anything else that I wanted to talk about? I guess, Mono Red Cavalcade made the top 8. There was only one player playing it, Li Shitian, and he made the top 8. And I don't know why more people didn't register Mono Red. It just seems like an obvious choice to beat Golos. But whatever. What do I know? But in any case, I think that's about it. I guess I was going to bring up Kenrith the Return King because people have suggested banning this. I think it's a terrible idea. It wouldn't do anything. But I think that I'm done for this one. So just let me know if there's anything else that you think is in the running to be banned on Monday, or what could be banned, like in your wildest dreams. If they ban this one card, everything will fall into place. Just give me your theories and speculation and stuff down there. If you think nothing should be banned, let me know that too. I think that with this top 8, it's not like we have 8 different decks or anything, but Standard's looking a lot healthier than we thought it was going to look 36 hours ago, even if it's not as healthy as we want it to be. We thought it was going to be 7 Golos decks and 1 Simic deck or something, but instead it's kind of inverted. But either way, Standard is a little bit more healthy than we thought it would be, but I think it could be healthier. So let me know how we get there down there in the comments section. And in the meantime, share the video around. More people get in on the discussion here. Subscribe if you haven't done it yet. That probably helps me more than just about anything you could do. But you could also go to the Patreon. That's a big deal. Link in the description, or just patreon.com/SBMTG. Throw $1 in the pot every month. Just a buck, and I'll let you pick what videos we do around here. I'll let you know what we're doing 24 hours in advance. So do all that stuff. Head over to TCG Player. They sponsor my content. Link in the description for them. Every click that you give me helps me out. It helps my standing with them. So help me out that way. Any way that you can. Even if you just do one of those things, it would make me very happy. So, but anyway, I think I'm actually done babbling for this one. So let me know how you felt about all the takes, and I'll catch you cats later. I'm Dev from the Place. Thanks for watching, my wizards. Spread love and be kind.